The Penguins will try to make it 3 wins in a row on Tuesday night against the Vancouver Canucks, and Pat and I are going to preview that game for you guys right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Dip. You can follow him on all social media platforms at Send for Wet. You can also follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins, and you can follow the show's Instagram account at LockedOn_Penguins. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen/watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Down the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Pat, it's Penguins Canucks tonight from PPG Paints Arena. The Penguins are officially back from their California trip, going 2-1. Penguins are 4-2 to start the year, as are the Vancouver Canucks. They are also 4-2 to start the year, second in the Pacific Division. They just beat the Washington Capitals on the road over the weekend. They were blowing them out, and then the Capitals made a nice little run at it towards the end of the game, but the Canucks were able to hang on to win that game. And this is a big year for Vancouver. I think if they don't make the playoffs, you might see someone like Quinn Hughes potentially ask out. Like, I know they're really trying to sign him, but obviously, Pat, the rumors of him wanting to go play with his brothers in New Jersey are very much there. Vancouver, it would behoove everyone in the Metro if you could just keep him there and not have him go to the New Jersey Devils. I'm good with just playing Quinn Hughes twice a year, but that's where we have to start with the Canucks, Pat. Quinn Hughes is arguably the best defenseman on the planet. It's him and Cale Makar. I have Makar a smidge higher, but Quinn Hughes is right up there. He does everything for them. He is an elite skater. He is elite at generating offense. He has a great release. He's great in his own zone. There is nothing that Quinn Hughes is bad at. And he literally drives it all for the Canucks. He has 1 goal, 5 points in 6 games. Connor Garland has also been really good for the Canucks this year. 1 goal, 6 points in 6 games. How about Kiefer Sherwood, by the way? 4 goals in his first 6 games to start the year. This is a very banged up Canucks team. More on that in a second. But Pat, I just really wanted to take some time to park it when it comes to Quinn Hughes, because you don't slow him down, you're not winning this game.
No, he is the best player on that team. And like you said, arguably the best defenseman in the National Hockey League. He does not do a single thing poorly. There may be parts of his game that aren't as strong as the other, but there are no actual weaknesses in his game. And you really have to keep an eye on him when you're playing the Vancouver Canucks. And you look up and down this lineup, and we'll get to the injuries in a second. It's a pretty well-balanced lineup by Vancouver. You got to give our good and former friend Jim Rutherford, future Penguins Hall of Famer, by the way, Jim Rutherford. Him and Alvin have done a good job of putting together a pretty solid roster here. You look at that top line of DeBrusk, Pettersson, Garland, one of the Petterssons, because they have 3 of them. But and then you go to their second line: Kane, Ratti, Kiefer Sherwood, Baines, Sasson, Linus Karlsson, Drew O'Connor, another old friend of ours. But there's so many injuries, which let's get to that. I want to talk about this real quick, and I know I'm going to anger some of our listeners. The hit on Philip Hedl against the Caps by Tom Wilson. That's just bad timing. It wasn't dirty. It was a nameplate hit. People saw the name Wilson and instantly went to dirty. That was pretty clean hit. Just
it was a 2-minute minor. I think if you gave him a minor for that, that's all. I don't think it was worthy of a 5-minute major.
But to that point, you don't have Hedl, you don't have Forbert, you don't have Teddy Bluger, you don't have Brisebois. You might have Brock Besser tonight. He's been out with for a personal reason. We don't know what that is. We're not going to speculate. Hope everything is okay in his life and he's able to get back sooner rather than later. So for the Penguins tonight, you're going up against a pretty banged up team in Vancouver who is in the middle of an East Coast swing. So you can take advantage of this team tonight if you play this correctly. But, and I'll pass this back off to you, Hunter, The big X factor, if he plays tonight, is the man in net, Thatcher Demko. He seems to have remembered that he is Thatcher Demko, and he has played really, really well this year.
Got to get a lot of traffic in front of him. He's been one of the best goaltenders on the planet to start this season. 4 games, 3 wins, 922 save percentage, 2.28 goals against average. He's been a rock for the Canucks. A player that is off to a slow start, though, Pat, Elias Pettersson. Only 1 goal, 3 points in 6 games. If you can get him off his game, that's another key to victory for me. Already discussed Quinn Hughes.
I will say, though, for the main Pettersson, shall we call him, this so far, and obviously it's still very early in the season, this hasn't been like the last couple of years with him where he seems almost disengaged, like he doesn't really want to be playing. He made a couple of massive blocks on no one other than Alex Ovechkin as they held on. So he's playing pretty hard, and he's probably going to break through. This isn't like the last couple years where it looked like he wanted to be anywhere else but in a Vancouver jersey. So you do have to keep an eye on him tonight because the effort has been there, and he looks like a player who a breakthrough is coming sooner rather than later. So that's another player that the Penguins really got to keep an eye on tonight.
Honestly, it felt like he was just tired of Rick Tocchet. Like, I think he was just checked out from Tocchet coaching him and was just ready for a coaching change. And once that happened, he's just been a little bit more rejuvenated. Again, a little bit of a slow start, but you can tell when watching these games that he's fairly engaged. It was really fun to watch that game on Sunday against the Capitals. I think to me, at least, he was one of the Canucks' best players throughout that game. So always got to watch out for him. But if you can neutralize him, which some teams have done to start the year, that's obviously, again, a key to victory. Getting traffic in front of Thatcher Demko, always a big one as well. The Canucks are averaging 3.17 goals per game. So this is going to be a test for the Penguins defensive group. Obviously, they've pitched 2 shutouts in the first 6 games, but there have been times where they've had to be tested in their own zone. And the Canucks, even though they're a bit banged up, Pat, they're going to do that. We'll have to see if Brock Besser returns. Again, echo your thoughts. We're not going to speculate on what he's been doing with. I will say, though, he is a Penguins killer. So if he plays tonight, like I said last week for Chris Kreider, anytime goal score on FanDuel, boom, you probably won money. This time, too, if Besser plays, anytime goal score on FanDuel, he has 11 goals in 13 games against the Penguins in his career, 16 points total. He is also a very underrated Penguins killer. We're going to see Marcus Pettersson. That's going to be a lot of fun. Drew O'Connor will be in the lineup. Former Penguins defenseman P.O. Joseph, Pat, is also projected to be in the lineup. So you got your former Penguins in this one just because Jim Rutherford loves collecting former Penguins like they are Infinity Stones. But
he sure does. And I will say this, if P.O. Joseph does slot into the lineup, which it looks like he will tonight, the Penguins do have to take advantage of him being on the bottom pairing. I don't want to say I don't like him. I don't think he's good or anything like that. I'm not dumping on a former Penguin, but you could see his struggles over the past couple of years. He doesn't have a good enough first step, and you can expose him defensively if you attack him the correct way. And if I'm Dan Muse and the coaching staff, I'm telling, especially the top 6, if they find themselves out there with P.O. Joseph, whatever side he's playing on tonight, attack that side every single chance you get.
I agree. And I also will say when it comes to the matchups between the 2 teams' bottom 6s, I think the Penguins have a big advantage. You know, you look at Vancouver's bottom 6, Pat, with all the injuries they have right now, the Penguins have a fairly big advantage when it comes to their 3rd and 4th lines, especially with Ben Kindle centering that 3rd line versus Vancouver's 3rd line, and then also the same for their 4th line. So that's also a pretty big advantage. I'd even say that the 2nd line, I think the Penguins have an advantage. Always got to watch out for Evander Kane. He's going to look to throw some big hits. That's what he does. He can bring a little bit of offense, but he's also going to try to throw some big hits whenever he's on the ice. So
plus, if they don't get Besser back tonight, there's a good chance they're going to go with 8-7 or 10-7. And if that's the case, then you can expose that. So you really would be able to just target them as best you can and use your legs against them, because if they're going to have to roll someone over in the forward unit every other shift or every 3rd shift, they're going to be dogged by the end of the game. So you don't want to get them into a track meet but you do want to make them work. You want to make them work every single shift. You want to be a little bit heavier on the forecheck. You want to put them under duress. And if you can do that by the way they set their lineup tonight, if they don't get Besser back, that could be another advantage in the Penguins column going into this game.
I agree. So again tonight, Penguins Canucks. Penguins looking for their third straight win of the season, trying to get to 5-2 overall in their first 7 games. That will do it for this first segment. Coming up in the second segment, Pat and I are going to talk about who is starting in net for the Penguins tonight, plus a couple other things to get you guys set for Penguins Canucks. It's coming up right after this. But before we get to that, we have to tell you all about a couple sponsors, and that one of them is FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you will unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even follow the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you are a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And we're not done. We have to tell you all about our next sponsor, and that is Rugiet. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. It makes it to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online. No awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. And if you get prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. Visit Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL to get 15% off your first year. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNHL. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNHL so they know we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Pat Stamp. And Pat, it should come as no surprise that the Penguins are starting Arturs Silovs tonight as Dan Muse continues the goalie rotation. This will be Silovs' 4th start of the year. And if he keeps up the rotation, we could get Tristan Jarry on Thursday against the Panthers. But for this game specifically against the Canucks, this is a no-brainer. You have to start him against his former team so he can get a little bit of payback, a little bit of revenge, all that good stuff. Try to show the Canucks, hey, you shouldn't have traded me, even though they were pretty stacked at the NHL level in all seriousness. Thatcher Demko and Kevin Lankinen, they kind of didn't have a choice. But this was 100% the right move by Dan Muse, and I'm excited to see what he can do and how he can build off his last start against the LA Kings going into this game.
Absolutely. Before I dive into it, I'm just going to correct myself from the first segment. 11-7 is what I was going for. If you've listened to this show, especially when I host and I have to do the Monarch ads, Math and I don't get along very well. And yeah, that was just my brain being bad at numbers again. So you can yell at me in the comments for it. But back to this. Yeah, I think it's the right move to give Silovs the start against his former team. At the same time, though, there's really no spurned lover crisis here. You look at the names that the Canucks have organizationally in net, he was the odd man out. And if they were going to have to try to send him back to the AHL, it was going to require waivers and somebody was probably going to snatch him up. But at the end of the day, it is, even if it's not an actual scorned lover situation, you can make them regret it a little bit. You can make them second guess why they should have kept you or not kept you. And we're just keeping the rotation going. We have been talking about it through the first 2 weeks of the season. Neither Jarry nor Silovs has really taken the reins yet. That said, it's still very early, so they really haven't had that long of an opportunity to take over the net. Both have had some good starts. Both have had a bad start each. So they're still jockeying for position. But this is another opportunity for Arturs Silovs to put his flag down and maybe take another step toward taking the net.
I think until one of these goalies really puts his foot down and says, hey, I'm the starter, I think you're just going to keep seeing this rotation. And it's fine. Again, for as much as I wanted Silovs to start in San Jose, I know the process that Dan Muse is going through with this, and it's very much a platoon. It's very much a 1A, 1B rotation until one of these goalies kind of takes the reins here and says, hey, I'm the number one guy, and the other guy is a backup. So,
and Muse pretty much confirmed that yesterday, basically saying he's not going to lock in a time period for how long they're going to do this, because like so much, they're taking it a game at a time. And if Silovs has another strong start tonight, you go back to Jari on Thursday. And if Jari struggles, you go back to Silovs, and maybe you start seeing what happens and vice versa. If Silovs struggles tonight and Jari puts in a good performance against the Panthers, maybe this all switches up. Or we continue down the track we're in, where when we did studs and duds last week, we both said that Jari and Silovs are just right there in the middle. They're not quite studs. They're not quite duds.
Right.
Neither of them has had that big of a moment yet. So we'll see what happens.
I would say both goalies have had 2 of 3 really sound starts, and the other 2 kind of meh. Silovs didn't have a good one against the Rangers. Jari could have been a little bit better against the Ducks, but I think a lot of those were overall team performances that were also not as good, and the goalie, you can just throw that in there as well. So 2 out of 3 so far for both. That's good. And again, we're just going to keep seeing this rotation so far. Also, as for this game, Pat, this has nothing to do with the players on the ice. But before we started recording, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. Josh Getzoff has been activated off IR per Penguins PR on social media, and he will be back calling tonight's game for Sportsnet Pittsburgh after that health scare on the California trip where he had to be rushed to the hospital, didn't call the final 2 games of that trip. Joe Brand, who does radio usually, did an excellent job stepping in for Getzoff. But Pat, Getzoff is back. He will be calling this game for Sportsnet Pittsburgh. Joe Brand will be back on the Penguins radio network. Excellent news that Getzoff is totally back to normal. Just really huge, man.
Yeah, we love to see that. That was genuinely terrifying, because that's just something you don't want to see happen. And it leads to a lot of speculation and a lot of worry. So we're glad that he provided us with updates, that he was doing well, that he was on the road to recovery. And it's even better news that he's going to be back in the booth for the Penguins tonight.
To me, Pat, it's the best news of the day. So thankfully, he'll be back in the broadcast booth tonight and everything is back to normal with Josh. And that'll do it for this second segment. Coming up to end the show, we're going to get into a little bit of news and notes from practice. So stick around for that coming up right after this. But before we get to that, we have to tell you all about our final sponsor, and that is Monarch. Let's be honest, most of us can't even name all our financial accounts, let alone what they're worth. Between 401ks, savings, and investments, it's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. That's why I started using Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. It has helped me organize my accounts, track my spending, and get a better handle on my investments without having to touch a spreadsheet. I love that I can review everything with my partner, see our shared goals, and make better financial decisions together. Monarch's visual dashboards and smart tools make it so much easier to understand where my money is going and how to make it work harder for me. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarch.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. That's my co-host, Patrick Am. And Pat, during Monday's practice, I was there for a good chunk of it. It was about 45 to 50 minutes on the ice. A lot of special teams work. Dan Muse continues to tinker a little bit with a penalty kill. You also got to see the power play get some work in, just because at times they've had a little bit of a slow start to the season, but I still like seeing the penalty kill also get some work on as well, just because going into the road trip and even during the road trip, it just was way too passive. But I think as the road trip went on, you got to see it be a bit more aggressive and get back to what we saw during the first 2 games of the season, where They were more aggressive. They were being stingy when it came to preventing zone entries, all that stuff. So I like seeing that. Also, Rucker McGroarty got a full on-ice workout before practice. Also did the same today before the morning skate. So, Pat, that's also some really positive news. I think the next step for him is getting him on the ice with his teammates, having him cleared for practice, cleared for contact. Based on the fact that he's getting full workouts in individually, I don't think it's too far away. I know I'm speculating a little bit on that, but it seems like to me that that is not too far away. And hopefully that means he's not too far away from resuming playing. And we'll have to see if he gets a conditioning stint in the AHL. That's probably best for him to start after missing all of camp, all of preseason, and the start of the regular season. Get him some games, and then you can call him up after he plays 2-3 games for Wilkes-Barre during a weekend, something like that. But that was also some really positive news from Monday's practice.
I keep erring on the side of caution with McGroarty because I'll reiterate it for the millionth time. There are no playoff or championship expectations for this team this year. So making sure a player like McGroarty is on the correct developmental track is the perfect way to go. You don't need to rush him back. You don't need to make sure that he's only 85% so you can put him into the lineup. Let him take his time. Let him heal. Let him get his strength back. And like you said, the next step will be taking on a full practice with some contact and then seeing how he does. And if he does well in that, send him to Wilkes-Barre for a few games. Let him get back up to game speed. Let him figure it out. And then if he's ready, you can bring him up to the NHL. But we've also seen that players like Ben Kindle have really shown that they can fill that void for right now. And we'll see what happens with Kindle in the rest of the season. But for right now, getting him out there and getting him back up to speed is the best way to go about it. I also really enjoy that Muse is putting such an emphasis on special teams. And obviously, it's still very early. Teams have played anywhere between 5 and 6 games as a whole league. But right now, the Penguins' special teams are decidedly mid. They're both sitting dead smack in the middle of the NHL. The power play is doing fine enough. They're getting looks. They're getting opportunities. You just have to hope eventually the puck starts to go in a little more consistently for them. But overall, I've liked the process for the most part on the power play. PK, on the other hand, been hot and cold. It's had nights where it looks really good. It has nights where it looks really bad. So you just got to keep the process going. You just got to keep pounding the rock and working on it and finding a way to climb up a little bit. They don't have to be tops in the NHL, though it would be nice. But if they can stick in the top half of the league, you're not going to see any complaints from me.
And that's very doable. Like, I think when this PK is on, it has the ability to be an above average PK. I don't think it needs to be top 5, though. Obviously, I would welcome it, but it definitely has the ability to be in the top 16 of the league. When it comes to the power play, though, I really think it's going to get a bit better once Sid gets going a little bit more, even though he's at a point per game, but we all know that he has another level to reach. And B, once Brian Rust starts playing better, Pat, since he's come back, I haven't really liked a lot of his games that he has played, to be honest. And he's been banged up throughout camp, throughout preseason. It's going to probably take him a little bit of time to get going. I'm not too concerned. But once he also is able to start playing a lot better, I think you're also going to see this power play cook a bit more. He's usually on the top unit. Without him, they were running 2 defensemen on there, so that was kind of throwing some things off. Now that he's back, see if he can get going. And then once hopefully that happens, and then once hopefully Sid raises his game to another level, which we know is going to happen, I think you're going to see this power play cook a little bit more.
I do too. The potential and the talent is there for it. And I think we've seen, as we talked about and wanted to see from Dan Muse, he's not afraid to try new things. He's not afraid to try new combinations. So if we go another week or so and it seems like it's stagnating a little bit, I wouldn't be shocked to see him experiment with some new lineups, with some new configurations. The other thing that I noted both from practice as well as morning skate, the 2 players that I have been focused on, I know you've been focused on them as well. It looks like Tomasino is going to be out tonight from the lineup, but Tommy Novak will be in. This is really getting down to the nitty-gritty for both of them. I know it's early, but as I like to say on this show, it can get late very early in a season. And I continue to say, I don't think that they're playing poorly, because they're not, but eventually they are going to have moments. They are eventually going to have to stand out. They're going to have a game or two where they make a more positive impact on the roster, and they're starting to quickly run out of chances. I like the potential that both of these players have. Tomasino had a really hot start when he was acquired from Nashville. Novak never really got the opportunity because he got hurt so quickly after being acquired. But eventually these two are going to have moments and make their marks, or they could really become odd men out, because as we saw after camp, Dubas and Muse are not afraid to pull the trigger and give the younger guys and the prospects the opportunity to play.
Right, I hear you. And when it comes to Novak, I'm more fine with him staying in just because he has a longer history of producing at a pretty good rate in the NHL. So that's why I'm like, okay, let's see if he can get going, even though he hasn't played as well to start the season, though I'm not as down on him as others in the fan base are, in my opinion. As for Tomasino, this is kind of who he's been as a Penguin. Obviously, he had that really hot start, Pat, but then he went cold. Then he got a little bit hot again, and then he went cold. And now he's been really cold to open the season. He's been invisible in most of the shifts that he's been out there, outside of a few where he's had some decent scoring chances. But if he's not consistent, they might honestly have to figure out a potential trade partner for him this season where they can flip him to a team that can maybe get a little bit more out of him. Because again, McGroarty's going to be back at some point. They also have Kevin Hayes working his way back. I know people are going to roll their eyes when they hear that or watch me say that on YouTube, but I do have a feeling Kevin Hayes is going to get into this lineup at some point this season. It's probably not going to be every game, but they're going to want to get him at least a few games so they can see what his value is. Because again, his contract is up after this year. So again, I know people are going to get mad at me for saying that, but he's going to play at least a little bit this year. I'd be stunned if he didn't.
And he should, because I know our listeners will roll their eyes at it because we all want the young guys to come up.
Right.
We all want the young guys to have bigger roles. But Kevin Hayes was a solid Penguin last year. He may not fit the mold of what we're looking for, but he's very good at puck possession. He's got very underrated vision, and he can play in tight spaces. And in a bottom six role, he may be a little bit older. He may not have the foot speed, but he has been a mostly effective Penguin. And when he's back from injury, it's not going to be the worst thing in the world to give him a spot in the lineup.
Right. And again, it just creates more competition, by the way, when it comes to a lot of these spots, especially in the bottom six. It's going to be a lot of fun to track throughout the year. You're going to see more lineup changes than you are used to seeing kind of on a game to game or maybe every other game basis. So it's just going to be a lot of fun looking at that as well. But I think, Pat, that'll do it for the Tuesday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to / watch this one. Pat and I will be back with another edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast on Wednesday, recapping this game against the Canucks. Plus, it'll be Wednesday. We're giving out our Warrior helmet for this past week. So stick around for that coming up on Wednesday. So for Patrick Damp, I'm Hunter Hodes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back on Wednesday.